We also have big news, Russia's overnight escalation on the war in Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced he is calling up hundreds of thousands of reservists while also approving a move to annex portions of Ukraine. In a rare pre-recorded address, Putin claimed the West is, quote, trying to destroy us, and that, quote, Russia will use all the instruments at its disposal to counter a threat against its territorial integrity. This is not a bluff. The potential nuclear threat comes amid major setbacks for the Kremlin on the battlefield and around the world. Russia is also planning to hold sham referendums beginning Friday on parts of Ukraine joining Russia. These votes are illegal under both Ukrainian and international law. Joining us now, member of the Foreign Relations Committee, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Senator, thanks for being on. First, your reaction to this major announcement by Putin overnight. And do you think it's because the world is slowly, openly turning its back on this war?
I think Putin is primarily speaking to a domestic audience. Increasingly, he's facing major resistance inside his country from many of his own political advisors who see this war going horribly inside Ukraine. Not only has the West been united against Russia, has NATO expanded, Europe has stuck together, but as we've seen over the last 30 days, Ukraine is advancing. Russia is headed into a massive recession, which is going to provide a real sort of platform of instability for Putin and his oligarchy. So I think he has to justify to his elites why he's staying in this war. He's got to justify to the public. And so that's why he creates this impression that there's some threat to his own country's territorial integrity. Of course, that's made up. That's a lie. Ukraine is not seeking to expand its territory into Russia. Russia is attempting to overrun Ukraine. So, yes, it's true that there have been some tough words for Putin from his friends in Beijing and in Ankara. But I think this is a lot of Putin facing some real hostility internally, and he's trying to gin up support for his illegal war domestically.
Senator Murphy, without American aid, American intelligence, American weaponry to Ukraine, we're looking at a very different battlefield, a very different landscape, both politically and militarily. You've indicated recently that you think that if the Republicans maintain or win control of the House or the Senate in these off-year elections that are coming up, that aid could be reduced, if not eliminated. Why would anyone do that at this point?
Well, I'm just reading the writing on the wall. 1/3 of House Republicans voted against the May supplemental appropriations for Ukraine. And many closest to Trump spent that time online castigating House Republicans for supporting Ukraine aid. I just see a freight train coming, and that is Trump and his operation turning against aid for Ukraine. House Republicans, if they were to take the majority, being preternaturally against anything that Joe Biden is for, including the war in Ukraine, and there being a real crisis where a House Republican majority would refuse to support additional aid to Ukraine. We saw this during the Obama administration when President Obama was proposing to bomb Syria in response to Assad's use of chemical weapons. Republicans who normally would have supported such an endeavor opposed it simply because it was being proposed by President Obama. I think the same thing is likely to happen if the House falls into Republican control. And so the question is, why would they do that? Well, there's no good national security reason to feed Ukraine to Russia. It's all dictated by domestic politics. Whatever Joe Biden is for, I fear a House Republican majority will be against.
Senator, let's talk about Taiwan. Over the summer, President Biden said not just once, twice, 3 times, but 4 times that America would come to the defense of Taiwan if attacked by the Chinese. Is it politically palatable for the American public to send their sons and daughters to defend Taiwan? Is that the policy of President Biden?
Well, I don't think that that's a reality we're going to have to confront for a number of years. China today is not ready to launch an invasion against Taiwan, and a decision about whether the United States should come to the aid of Taiwan will be fact-based. And so I don't know that today I can sit here and tell you whether I would support sending U.S. forces to defend the island. What I do know is that we should be ready, and we have been served well over the years by a policy in which we hold open the potential that the United States will defend Taiwan. It is part of what holds China at bay. I do worry a bit that there are those in Washington that are arguing to move this strategic ambiguity to a policy of strategic clarity, essentially a security guarantee for Taiwan. I think that might precipitate an invasion. I think that might move up the date upon which China advances on the island before Taiwan is ready. So for me, it may be that the United States will come to Taiwan's aid, but I don't think we necessarily have to preview that so explicitly until we are faced with that inevitability.
Senator Chris Murphy, thank you so much for coming on this morning. And